People, one family, and one glorious nation under God. As you know, the left is trying to shame Christians. They try and shame us. I'm a very proud Christian, actually. Taking the bullets, taking the arrows, I'm taking them for you, and I'm so honored to take them. You have no idea.
Bullshit.
November 5th is going to be
I didn't mean to say it
something
like
else.
that.
It's going to be called Christian Visibility Day, when Christians turn out in numbers that nobody has ever seen before.
Donald Trump is ramping up his religious rhetoric in his presidential rallies. His call for Christian Visibility Day comes in response to President Biden's support of Transgender Day of Visibility, which fell on Easter this year. He called it, quote, a total disrespect to Christians. Trump thinks Christians need a day of visibility because they're so invisible. He's playing to evangelical Christians who have been a key part of his political base for nearly a decade. But for some evangelicals, Trump's election was the tipping point for them to leave. In her new book, my next guest describes the disillusionment she and some other women raised in the evangelical world felt, writing, quote, feelings of shock and anger that the same leaders who ordered us to remain sexually pure until marriage and who condemned Bill Clinton's moral failings in the 1990s would not only tolerate, but embrace and promote Trump. Joining me now to talk about her new book, Sarah McCammon, author of The Evangelicals. She is also a national political correspondent for NPR and co-host on the NPR Politics podcast. Thank you very much for coming to the Saturday show, Sarah. So what are your thoughts on Trump's religious messages during his rallies and this call for Christian Visibility Day?
Of course, that call was a response to Trans Visibility Day, which was recognized by the White House on March 31st. It has been for several years. It happened to fall on Easter Sunday this year. And some conservative Christians said that was an attack on their faith, even though it was a coincidence. But Trump's call for Christian Visibility Day is part of a much longer history of rhetoric aimed at evangelical Christians. You know, evangelicals are a shrinking part of the population. White Christians are in general. But they are a major voting bloc for Republicans and have been for a long time. Evangelicals, white evangelicals, are the largest and one of the most reliable voting blocs for Republicans. Trump knows that. And he tailors his messages to white evangelicals who many times sense this erosion of their cultural dominance and I think often resonate with those kinds of messages.
Well, see, I'm just wondering, why do you think evangelicals support Trump in spite of his personal and legal history that my Washington Post columnist colleague Ramesh Ponnuru characterized as, quote, a compendium of the 7 deadly sins?
There are a couple of reasons. One is just pragmatic. Trump promised to deliver on some of the longstanding political and ideological priorities of white evangelicals. The most prominent example, of course, is overturning Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. White evangelicals are one of the groups, are the group, the religious group that's most opposed to abortion rights. And that had been a rallying cry for decades, as I describe in the book. Trump promised to do that. He succeeded with naming 3 conservative Supreme Court justices who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. So they see him as someone who has delivered and will continue to deliver on their goals. They also see him, again, with messaging like that, like we need Christians to be more visible, or the Trump Bible that I know we've talked about
that's right,
over a week ago when, you know, he went on Truth Social and started selling God Bless the USA Bibles, wrapped with this rhetoric about a declining America as a declining Christian nation, needing to bring Christianity back. Those messages resonate with evangelicals. So they see him as someone who will deliver on their goals and also as someone who is a champion of their movement, regardless of his moral behavior. And, you know, there's polling that suggests that most white evangelicals who support Trump don't think he's a very religious person, but I don't think that's their primary concern.
Right. You know, in your book, you also mentioned, quote, I'm reading here, many ex-evangelicals report feeling relief after giving up the struggle to affirm doctrines that violate their deepest intuitions about morality and often reality. About morality and often reality. Can you tell us more about this feeling? And is this the feeling that inspired you to write your book?
So I think it's important to understand that people leaving white evangelicalism this is happening in the context of larger religious decline across the board. But evangelicalism, again, is a particularly important voting bloc for Republicans. If you look at white Catholics, for example, they're pretty 50-50 Republicans, Democrats. White evangelicals overwhelmingly vote for Republicans. So this particular movement away from religiosity is particularly politically salient. And I talk in the book about my own experience, which happened long before the Trump campaign, I should say, and the experiences of lots of other people that I've run across online who use this term ex-evangelical to describe this process of leaving and rethinking their faith. And for many, yes, there are a host of reasons. Some of them are political. Some of them have to do with the way their churches talk about women or LGBTQ people. But the book is really about that process of rethinking what you believe, what you've been told, and sort of figuring out who you want to be in the world.
And real quickly, what do you hope people get from reading your book when they've read it?
Well, I hope people who've experienced their own religious wrestling, whatever it is, will resonate with it and feel seen. And people who are confused about white evangelicalism, try to understand it, I hope it will provide new insight into what that culture is like.
I'm going to crack the binding on my copy as soon as this show is over. Sarah McCann,
Beautiful
thank you very much
synopsis.
for coming to the Saturday Show. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with more of the Saturday Show.